So the reason why IFRS 16 is so important to commercial property is that it changes fundamentally the way in which leases of all different kinds have to be accounted for by companies. So what do I mean by that? It means that for the first time, companies have to disclose to the outside world the full cost value of all of their lease liabilities. In the past, that hasn't been a requirement. Companies have been able to keep leases off balance sheet. IFRS 16 changes all of that, and for the first time, companies have to show the full extent of their liabilities on leases. Most commercial property, as we know today, is consumed in the form of a lease, so commercial property leases will have to be disclosed by companies from the 1st of January 2019. Well, I think that some of the interesting effects of IFRS 16 will be changing how companies themselves look at their leases, and in turn, the fact that long-term leases, as is normal in commercial property, will suddenly create quite large, sometimes scary numbers in the accounts of companies that previously CEOs and CFOs and outside investors and lenders to companies actually wouldn't have had visibility of. They wouldn't have necessarily have seen the level of long-term commitments to commercial property, and that will change how companies go about leasing. And we think it'll have an impact where companies start to look at shorter lease terms. So that has big implications for property owners and landlords, that actually tenants might increasingly be looking for shorter leases, more flexible lease arrangements. The kind of things that we would expect CFOs to be thinking about is, over the whole company, what is this new number in financial terms that they're going to have to be putting on their balance sheet and showing the outside world? How big is that number? And in turn, if it is a significant number, and we think it will be for large businesses operating in multiple countries, how do I get that number to be less scary? And that would be where we expect CFOs to think about, do we have too much property on long-term leases? Do we have the right amount? Can we be smarter in how we go about fulfilling our property requirements? IFRS 16 is all about transparency. It's about giving people who are interested in the financial health and strength of a company greater visibility and transparency about the liabilities that relate to leases that a company has signed up to. That is important for investors in a company and lenders to a company. I think CFOs will have to think about the likely reaction and response from those stakeholders and how to manage that accordingly. We think that companies increasingly see value from having a flexible workspace strategy coming from a number of things. IFRS 16 will provide a further catalyst. But in addition to that, there are significant financial benefits to be had from consuming workspace on demand. Why? Because we know that when you take property on long-term leases, it results in inefficiency. Companies usually end up taking more space than they need, end up incurring more costs than they have to. Flexible workspace is a fantastic opportunity for businesses to be more efficient, because they only have to pay for the space when they need it, where they need it, and in the quantity that they need. And we think that that's a key benefit. IFRS 16 will drive a number of things. We think that because it doesn't apply to leases of less than 12 months, it means that companies can use flexible workspace in a way to alleviate the negative impact of IFRS 16, and I think that will help us. But also it's all about just sort of making people be more aware of the full cost commitment of very long-term property leases. And again, I think that'll drive a trend of companies wishing to think about consuming workspace more like a service rather than signing these very long-term, expensive, high-cost deals.